sa ngayon? Was that different in the past 10 years? Yung front work, so.
So far sa experience ko na Voice of the Free, seldom talaga yung massage yung front.
Na nagpresenta sa inyo para convince sila. So, paano po sila, nandito pa ba sila sa Pilipinas or umalis ba sila dito sa atin?
Sa ngayon po wala kami idea kung nandito pa rin yung group. So that, I think a month ago na rin po.
So, may maraming araw na rin. But fair enough, Ms. Cheryl, kami itatanong natin sa Bureau of Immigration. Kasi syempre, habang may mga dayuhan na may hawak na anumang travel document, whether visa upon arrival yun or ibang klaseng visa, BI ang nagmamonitor sa whereabouts at saka welfare nila. So, hihingin din natin yung data. Katulad nung pagkausap namin ni Ms. Cheryl, of the past years, disaggregated per year, ilan ang pumasok, under what kind of travel documents, for what kind of work, totoo or di umano, and yung welfare and whereabouts nila sa ngayon. At kung umalis na sila, ay kung paano sila nakaalis at bumabalik ba sila. No? Because this is really an industry. Ms. Cheryl, I just need to ask you also a couple of follow-up questions. Na matagal-tagal na rin po at lumalalim yung pagdinig dito sa Senate Committee on Labor under Chair Senator Joel, yung tungkol sa POGO. Sa tingin niyo po ba may kinalaman yung POGO sa paglalak ng Chinese prostitution industry dito sa Pilipinas?
Ayun po na. So, wala po ako eksaktong or reliable data talaga na masasabi niyo. Pero sa personal opinion ko po, malaking factor yung POGO dun sa paglaganap ng prostitution dito sa Pilipinas. Kasi nga, kumbaga yung Chinese customers, mga Chinese girls din yung pinukuha nila ng mga clients. And yung mga girls naman natin dito sa Pilipinas, usually, Chinese din yung nagiging customers nila. Katulad po sa case nila kanina, na exclusive yung company na napasukan niya sa mga foreign nationals. So, hindi nila tinatangkilik yung mga Filipino na customers. So, majority sa mga pinikater nila, mga Chinese, Japanese. So, ganun po, no? I think sobrang laki po nung kinalaman po dun sa prostitution.
And I think, Ms. Cheryl, yung bagamat sabi nyo, personal opinion na iyon could be borne out by the fact na nitong nakaraang halos 3 taon din, more or less, na talagang umusbong yung POGO industries dito sa Pilipinas, ay sa loob din itong nakaraang 3 taon, naging usong-uso yung VOA na yon or yung visa upon arrival visas. So, sisiyasabi pa natin lalo na mamaya with the BI. And lastly po for now, no, confirm ko lang po, gaya ng sinabi na kanina na inatatrabaho lang sila karamihan sa mga Chino at hindi sa mga Pilipino. Ganon din po ba sa mga Chinese women? I-confirm ko lang po, yung target market ng mga Chinese women ay mga Chinese din.
Yes po. Doon sa group ng 34, lahat Chinese yung customer. Meron lang din po isa pala na Saudi Arabian national. Pero yung 19 customers nila, lahat Chinese.
Thank you, Ms. Cheryl. And again, in a way nagtatali, no? Na yung dumami yung mga Chinese workers na dinililig na sa Senate Committee on Labor para sa POGO Industries at dumadami din yung mga Chinese prostituted women na tina-traffic at pinapasok sa prostitution industry dito. So at this point, gusto ko na nga dumako sa ating mga resource persons from the Bureau of Immigration. So dahil nasimulang pag-usapan, I think on the issue of the Chinese trafficked women, importante pong baseline question or threshold question ay kung paano sila nakapasok sa Pilipinas in the first place. Whether they're already working as prostituted women in China or whether niloko din sila, tulad ng pagloko kay kanina, tinraffic sila dito and then pinapatrabaho dito bilang prostituted women. So, should I ask Mr. Medina, will you be the resource person, sir? So, is the BI aware that Chinese women, victims of human trafficking, have been entering the country and are being sexually exploited in brothels and nightclubs here in the Philippines?
No, ma'am. Chinese arrive either through different visas they present in our counters, 9A or the tourist visa, and then another would be the visa upon arrival, which accounts, I think, about 4 to 5% of the total 1.8 million arrivals. Other visas are like 9G or working visa or special visas.
Before I ask follow-up questions about that, pero po sa mga resource persons natin from PNP and from NBI, yung pong mga na-rescue niyong Chinese prostituted women sa mga raids, ano po yung visa status nila? Yes, Major Ines.
Good morning po, ma'am. Karamihan po sa mga visa status ng mga nare-rescue dito sa human trafficking is they have no working visa. They are tourist visa.
So yung sinabi po ni Mr. Medina, yung 9G working visa, wala po silang ganong hawak na visa document?
Usually, ma'am, ang medyo nahihirapan kami sa pagdating sa mga series of interviews dahil yung mga passport nila at saka yung mga visas ay hawak-hawak yung kanilang mga yung maintainers, hindi nila binibigay. Yun ang karamihan mga problema namin.
At sabi po ni Mr. Medina ay yung iba naman ay may hawak na tourist visa. Doon sa mga na-rescue nyo, meron bang may hawak na tourist visa? At sabi din po nila, ni Mr. Medina, 4 to 5% lamang ay may hawak na yung VUA, yung visa upon arrival. Meron din bang hawak na VUA? Or karamihan ba ng mga na-rescue yung Chinese prostituted women ay VUA ang hawak na visa?
Wala pa akong idea, ma'am, doon sa buwa. But of course, yung sa tourist, tinitingnan natin yung mga visa nila. But since the human trafficking is a whole government approach, nakikipag-coordinate kami sa Bureau of Immigration as far as the status of this rescued woman is concerned.
Thank you, Major Ines. Mr. Medina, we just started with one question pero hindi pa natin nasimulang sagutin actually. Sabi niyo po yung they have different visas, tourist visa, 9G working visa or special visa, 4 to 5% lamang yung visa upon arrival. Pero kung ma-secure po nila iyon sa BI talaga, meron din po mga reports na may mga so-called accredited travel agencies na sila na po yung nag-aasikaso ng pag-secure ng VUA. So it's not actually visa upon arrival. Contradiction in terms, it's pre-arranged visa upon arrival kuno, arranged by these accredited travel agencies na nag-charge po ng more than 6 times yung charge ng BI for the visas through proper channels. May mga ulat pa po na may visual signal kung saan dapat pumila yung papasok using VUA, papasok through trafficking for the prostitution industry. Doon daw sila pipila sa mga immigration counter na may nakatayong mineral water bottle?
Ma'am, with regard, Madam Chairperson, with regard to those immigration officers that have reports of alleged connivance with those kinds of travel agencies or people, we have already instituted reforms. In fact, we have already have the Department of Justice to file cases for alleged individuals. In fact, the Bureau of Immigration also have new people on board to completely and combat or eliminate these kinds of wrongdoing. However, with regard to the protocol of having the visa upon arrival, we are also very strict in terms of examining and evaluating Chinese. In fact, out of the 7,700 exclusions, the most number of exclusions, more than 20% or almost 2,000 accounts for Chinese. In fact, even the Chinese embassy and some Chinese officials are not complaining but raising some concerns because ang ating mga immigration officers ay napakahigpit. In fact, pinakamarami pong interviews or referral for secondary inspection, lalo-lalo na ngayon po with NCOV, mas marami pong referrals at na-exclude po ang mga Chinese citizens kahit po kompleto ang kanilang dokumento. Kung ang base po sa aming evaluation, kasi po pag merong visa upon arrival or meron silang 9A tourist visa na ang nagbigay po is ang Philippine Consulate abroad, we still subject them to evaluation and interview. Kung makikita po namin na isang individual or isang Chinese citizen ay maaari pong maging victim of human trafficking, kung nasa profile niya po, ang tawag po namin doon ay risk assessment. Before we call it profiling, but because of the new department order on the departure and arrival formalities, we call it now as risk assessment. Ang nangyari po kung ang isang Chinese ay base sa aming assessment ay maaaring maging victim ng human trafficking or prostitute or walang kakayahan na mag-stay sa Philippines, wala siyang sabihin place to stay, wala siyang return ticket, wala siyang itinerary, siya po ay in-exclude. At our numbers, the numbers would bear us out that our immigration officers are very strict. Maari pong may mga ganyang magilan-gilan na reports, pero hindi po ito dinotolerate ng immigration. In fact, we file charges against them at yung, I think yung 4 na nabanggit niyo pong dun sa resolution, dun sa invitation. In fact, ang aming nire-report po namin sa aming Intel Division yung mga ganitong klaseng cases at that is why sa pagkikipagtulungan po sa PNP at sa ibang law enforcement agency, nakakahuli po tayo ng mga TENS sa pagkikipagtulungan po ng Bureau of Immigration. Recently, I think we have 500 deportees na mga Chinese na led po ng PNP at ng ating Intel Division ng PI. At isa pa po, I think yung nabanggit niyo pong 4 na Chinese, sa pagkikipagtulungan din po ng ating Intel Division, nahuli po yung recruiter nun at siya po ay mismo nakakulong sa ating detention facility o yung warden's facility natin sa Maytagig.
Actually, Mr. Medina, in fairness sa BI, we know that the Bureau has made great strides in preventing the sexual exploitation of Filipinas abroad. Ang pinagtatakhan ko lang po, kung ano ba yung mga sapat na measures dapat that the Bureau has taken to prevent the exploitation of foreign and Filipino women, but foreign women entering the Philippines for the purpose of sex work. Dahil yung pong mga characteristics na sinabi nyo na pinaghihigpitan di umano ng mga immigration officers, which has led to yung sinabi nyong great number of Chinese citizens being barred. Those are actually characteristics na classic, di ba? Yung maaring red flags o identifiers na mga na maaring biktima ng trafficking, single young woman traveling alone for the first time. So ginagamit nyo anong bureau ito to prevent trafficking of Filipinas from here abroad. Pero kung nagagamit po ito ng bureau as a profile to identify women exiting the country, hindi ba dapat yun din ang ginagamit for women entering the country? Disaggregated po ba yung data nyo of those barred from entry who would fit these characteristics? At ilan ang nakakalusot?
With regard naman po dun sa visa upon arrival, I think the BI also through the Department of Justice already amended the department order, making stricter guidelines on the new visa upon arrival that made it inconvertible and non-extendable for those who's going to be given the visa upon arrival. It cannot be converted, number one, hindi po siya pwedeng gawing working visa or gawing other visas kapag siya pa ay pumasok under BUA. And number two, hindi po siya pwedeng i-extend. So, meaning pag pumasok na po ang isang Chinese national using the BUA, it cannot be extended anymore. So, that's number one po na ginawa natin mas mahigpit. Department of Justice po ang mismo gumawa nitong order na ito.
I'm aware of that department order, Mr. Medina, disallowing further the extension of the VUA. But reports also persist na itong mga binanggit ko kanina, mga so-called accredited travel agencies na nag-pre-arrange ng mga VUA ay nag-offer din ng services for even more and more exorbitant fees para i-convert yung VUA into other kinds of visas to allow them to work here, traffic women to work here as prostituted women. Sorry, Mr. Medina, before you proceed, halimbawa po, ito yung isang screenshot na naglalarawan ng tinatanong ko sa inyo. Ito po mula sa isang fly-by-night na travel agency pangalang Fruit Travel. Meron siyang naka-offer dyan na we temporarily do not accept VUA but will provide new rules next week. We accept VUA conversion to travel visa. Tapos they accept local tours. So it's a business proposition. So it's an offer of a product, of a service. Kung VUA ang dala mo, entry into the country, kahit traffic ka, kahit bound ka for prostitution work, pwede namin i-convert to travel visa. Is the BI aware of this kind of business, Mr. Medina?
No po na. Also, I would like to emphasize and elucidate that ang BI po, the support operations to which I am heading right now, is in charge of the implementation if in case these visas are presented to us. But with regard to the approval of the visa upon arrival, this is done in the main office. And the evaluation and the documents being presented by the travel agencies are being done at our main office, not at the airport. And the immigration officers only would evaluate the genuineness and the authenticity, and of course, the profiling, the risk assessment of the passengers with regard to those approved visas that was presented to us.
Actually, Mr. Medina, I've heard some good things about you. Unfortunately, kayo po yung sumasagot sa akin ngayon para sa buong bureau. Medyo mahirap lang pong paniwalaan na ako po, opisina ko, isang legislator, makaka-access ng ganitong mga information from very concerned resource persons and readily available online at na hindi ito di umano alam ng BI. So medyo mahirap. And I would be towards the end of this hearing or couple of hearings or so, the committee will really be coming out with strong recommendations for the PI internally and externally acting against this. Kasi hindi po talaga kapaniwala na yung Bureau ay hindi ito alam. Sabi niyo po kanina, napakahigpit ng Bureau, ng mga immigration officers. Pero would you know ilan ang nakapasok na single women traveling alone for the first time? At least in the past 3 years, do you have data on that?
On that specific, I still don't have the raw data. Meron po ako yung total na 1.8 million Chinese who were able to enter the country. In fact, ang China po is number 2 ngayon sa ating tourist arrivals. I would want to consult po yung aking mga data later and I would submit it, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Medina. I will receive for the committee that data. I'm sure that's readily disaggregated. Doon lang sa arrival card nila, di ba? Anong civil status nila? Single. Anong sex nila? Women. Are they traveling alone or in a group? Check din yun. And is this their first time to visit the country or not? Kasi doon natin matitrace talaga sino sa kanila ang nandito pa, sino ang umalis, sino ang bumabalik-balik. And then we can trace we can pick up the trail of the trafficking and the prostitution here in the Philippines. So I'll just ask you last time, are you aware or are you not aware that Chinese women have been trafficked into the country? Itong mga nakita at nakasama ni na Karina dun sa mga bagay
Yes,
na yun.
ma'am. With regard to the reports, I also would want to emphasize that whenever we have intel reports with regard to this, we immediately call the attention of the Commissioner and the Intel Division to conduct the necessary operations or mission order. That is why I think Bureau of Immigration is not also trying to be remiss in their duty. That is why we have several raids, I think, with the Intel Division and the Chinese Embassy as well. Kapag meron po kami nalalaman na ganito mga intel reports, we immediately work on that, Madam Chair.
Importante po sa komite yung BI kasi sa pag-examine namin ng mga policy gaps that allow trafficking and prostitution to thrive. Napaka-importante dapat ng papel ng Bureau to stop the recruitment and entry into the Philippines. And nabanggit na rin kanina na we have international obligations. So in addition to protecting Filipinas here and Filipinas going abroad, protecting all women coming into the country, including the girl children. Sir, quick check lang kami dun sa mga datos ng Bureau nyo rin, no? 38,000 lamang ang na-bar na foreigners. So within 1 year, 38,000 lamang ang barred na foreigners, pero 1.3 million Chinese. So 3% lang yun. So paano po naging mahigpit? Ilan natin? So I'll be requesting before the end of this hearing, Mr. Medina from the BI, that disaggregated data for the past at least focus on the past 3 years, maybe going back for a decade. How many visitors, Chinese visitors, and in particular, how many falling under those characteristics. Single women traveling alone for the first time. And then, how many actually left, kung paano, at ilan sa kanila ang bumabalik-balik. So yun nga po, the data of Chinese single women traveling alone for the first time for the next hearing po. And para ma-focus lang yung data, please focus that on women in the age bracket of 18 to 25 years.
Yes, ma'am.
For now, nabanggit na rin ng maya-maya ang Department of Justice, so I'd like to turn to Yusek M, my old counterpart as chair of the House Committee on Women, and I'm glad to see you again, kahit na para sa isang napaka-mabagsik na dahilan. As the BI resource person mentioned earlier, Yusek, the first DO issued by the DOJ this year amends DOJ 041 issued by former Secretary Vitaliano Aguirre, granting visas upon arrival to Chinese citizens. And the new DO indeed shortens the term of these visas to 30 days with no opportunity to extend. Pwede ko pong malaman, ano ba yung nag-trigger ng pagbabagong iyon? Na-quote na po si Yusek Mark Perete as saying na it was to prevent abuse. So pwede niyo po bang sabihin sa committee what abuse was documented by the department? What abuse prompted the department to amend the previous department order?
In terms of providing statistics or actual cases of the abuse, it was Yusek Mark Perete as the Yusek in charge of the Bureau of Immigration that handled the research and investigation related to the issuance of the department order. So we'll be able to supply the Senator's office with this data within the week if permitted.
Please do. Pero nagkaroon na bang ganyang pagkakataon dati that a previous DO was amended by another department order at yung cited ground ay to prevent abuse? Or is this the first time that has happened?
It's not the first time. Like for instance, whenever in terms of the Bureau of Immigration's case, we had new department order, a succeeding department order, strengthening or clarifying departure formalities that amended a previous issuance of the department in this respect to make the departure formalities stricter, and further guidelines were issued pertaining to this that clarify certain matters such as having secondary screening for single women traveling alone, these instances.
Pero yung pong nauna mga pagbabago ng DO, for example, to amend those departure procedures or kaugnay ng mga paalis na single women traveling alone, kahit sa mga sitwasyon yun, kahit dun sa single women traveling alone leaving the country, hindi po na-cite as ground sa pagbabago ng DO yung to prevent abuse, that particular reason. To prevent trafficking.
To prevent trafficking or to tighten the departments and the bureau's efforts to prevent trafficking.
So there has been at least one instance before na may pagbabago ng DO to prevent trafficking. And now, pagbabago ng DO tungkol sa visas upon arrival to prevent abuse. So somehow may similarity in terms of the tone of concern and in terms of the urgency of the possible problem.
Yes.
Thank you, Yusek. Kanina nabanggit ko rin na like for one of our government agencies, yung BI has made strides in protecting our Filipinas going abroad. And the IACAT as a whole played an important collective role in that. What role has IACAT also taken in this simmering issue of POGO-related trafficking and prostitution? Pareho sa usapin ng entry issues at saka sa rescue. Kung kilos na po ba ang IACAT? And the good USEC is a key participant and leader in that body.
The IACAT is divided into regional task forces, and as you know, it's also composed of several agencies, including the BI, including the PNP and the DFA. These departments and agencies are all part of the IACAT. We regularly meet to talk about issues concerning trafficking, And specifically with respect to our regional task forces, and these are composed of our prosecutors together with the regional offices of some of our member agencies and departments like the DSWD. They are taking part in the activities of the regional task forces. In particular, our task forces have already conducted operations in terms of investigating possible cases of sexual prostitution involving Chinese nationals. We received recently certain reports and certain reports in Region 3 and in NCR concerning this, and the task forces are coordinating with the PNP and the NBI to conduct further investigations and possibly file cases.
That's good to know you. Second, will the IACAT possibly be making recommendations sa BI at sa ating mga law enforcement agencies kaugnay nung pag-confront dito sa issues ng POGO-related trafficking and prostitution?
Last year, towards the last quarter of 2019, since there were a lot of news reports regarding this, and of course, the IACAT acted promptly to call several meetings within the member agencies and set a couple of TWGs to discuss what can be done, and that's why the regional task forces were not activated, but were specifically tapped to see to it that within their regions, they keep an eye on these instances or build a faster coordination between the PNP, the DSWD for rescuing and for providing immediate psychosocial support to the victims, so that at once, whenever there's a report, they can respond quickly.
And I'm sure you set any recommendations from the IACAT on these issues, maging mahalaga din sa economic managers natin in terms of yung POGO industries as a whole dito sa Pilipinas. At matanong din po, what coordination efforts, if any, are being undertaken with the Chinese government to address this? Kasi kung tayo yung receiving country, sila po ay isang malaking sending country dito sa pagbuwang problema ng mga babae nito, mga batang babae.
On the IACAT's part, I think the DFA would be more proper to discuss talks with the Chinese with respect to this.
Fair enough.
Fair enough, you said. So could I ask just a quick question to the DFA resource person, kung meron akong coordination sa Chinese government and or embassy, at pati yung sa ibang mga bansa whose with the nationals are being embroiled in this terrible problem of trafficking and prostitution.
Magandang umaga po, Your Honor. Neil Perez, sa Secretary for the Office of Consular Affairs. Unang-una po, nagpapasalamat ako sa inyo for initiating this hearing. Kagaya po ninyo, ako po ay may anak ng mga babae. Apat po yun, at po doon ay minor edad. So, napakalaga po na proteksyon po natin ang karapatan po ng ating mga kabataan sa pagkabitan. Hinggil po sa tanong po ninyo tungkol sa IACAT, unfortunately po, it's another office. It's not my office handling it, but I will bring up the matter to the office in charge with IACAT within the department, and will request updates and will provide information to the committee. Hopefully, bringing up the matter with the Chinese government, alam po din po na meron pong several mechanisms in place. Meron po tayong tinatawag na joint bilateral consultation.
the other countries or embassies have taken action. I've heard there's at least one other foreign embassy here in the Philippines na sobrang nababahala na rin ng pagbibiktima sa mga babaeng nationals nila dito sa Pilipinas, dito sa mga Chinese prostitution dens din. A quick question to the NBI, or actually let's turn now to the law enforcement agencies, yung mga nagsasagawa po ng mga rape, nagsasagawa po ng mga rescue. And first off sa NBI, ano po ang response ng Chinese embassy sa Chinese prostitution? Who will be responding? I'm sorry, yes of course, Deputy Director de Guzman. Ano pong, may reaction na po ba ang Chinese embassy dito sa problema ng prostitution dens ng mga Chino dito sa atin?
Actually, when the NBI conducted the first operation against traffickers of Chinese women, I don't know if the Chinese embassy was just very busy at that time, and then we were suggesting that we need to turn over the rescued victims to the Chinese embassy. But unfortunately, we have no reply to, so to speak. After which, a group of Chinese officers who went to the NBI had an audience with the top officers of the NBI, and they want a collaborative efforts of their Chinese officers with the NBI in terms of combating transnational crimes.
In fact, Deputy Director, nabalitaan na natin na nag-express na ang Chinese government na gusto lang mag-crack down sa POGO in general, hindi lang dito sa Pilipinas, but in other countries around Asia. So I hope, sa kabila nung dati ay baka busy sila or no reply sa terribleng sitwasyon ng mga kababayan nilang babae dito sa Pilipinas, hopefully doon sa sinabi nilang transnational crime, sinasama po nila doon yung trafficking and prostitution. Would you know po kung bibigyan na nila ng atensyon yung prostitution at trafficking dito sa atin?
Yes, Your Honor. I think that's the very purpose no pagpunta ng mga top brass Chinese officers who had a meeting with the top officers of the NBI, and they are talagang intended nilang mag-collaborate sa law enforcers, specifically sa NBI, in terms of combating transnational crimes being committed by their nationals in the country.
I hope po, Deputy Director, na yung optimistic view nyo, which I would like to share, ay magkatotoo. In fact, sa susunod na hearing, imbitahin natin yung Chinese Embassy rin na makadalo to shed light on their perspective at kung ano yung aksyon na pwede o dapat nilang isagawa in partnership sa ating sariling mga law enforcement agencies. And I would like to continue with our law enforcement agencies, lalo na po on the issue of raids and rescues, at kasama na po yung ating mga kinatawan mula sa local government units. In a way, frontline din. No? After the BI, once makapasok na yung mga tao dito sa atin, kung saan mga syudad at lugar natin. Yes, of course, Sen. Frank, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know who can answer this question, but my impression is that there is a proliferation of these prostitution dens, which coincided with the increase or the number of POGO operations in Manila or in Metro Manila. Is that a correct premise? Dumami ba ang prostitution dens dahilan po dito sa pagdami noong POGO outlets dito sa ating bansa? O walang relasyon ito?
Your Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Insofar as the NBI is concerned, yung mga raids po ng aming operatives conducted on the prostitution dens, ang normally, ang ini-entertain, kasi you can book through the net. Hindi ka pwedeng pupunta rekta. Kailangan online ka mag-book. And ang ini-entertain lang nila are Chinese nationals. And most of their customers are POGO players. So an indication na ito ay talagang they are entertaining players from the Philippine offshore gaming.
Entertaining, or that this prostitution then was set up precisely to cater to the needs of the POGO agents or employees? Can we safely conclude, make that conclusion, make that connection?
Based on our investigation, Your Honor, ito ay primarily for Chinese customers, not necessarily POGO players. It so happened that Chinese citizens, most of them are POGO, employee of POGO.
Now, was this kind of a situation prevalent in the past when POGO was not yet in vogue? In other words, did you find a proliferation of prostitution that's catering principally to Chinese-speaking clients before the POGO became popular here in the country, or became a more visible activity?
Your Honor, based on the experience of the NBI, we only experience this kind of activities when POGO was created. And a lot of Chinese employees of POGO is the ultimate clients of these prostitution dens.
So yes, that's that's an observation which is shared by many policy makers. Would that be confirmed by the other resource persons present, Madam, or would anybody contradict that or have another view? Who could possibly give another point? What the law enforcement agencies, meaning the PNP? Yes, Major?
Yes, sir. Based on our profiling with those arrested traffickers, users of traffic persons, they are all POGO employees. We have statistics in our office that those are POGO employees.
Of course, not included in the statistics is whether or not the cost or the fees have increased with the POGO operators. Hindi lang mo siguro yun. Anyway, the next question that I have, ma'am, given this situation that confronts us today in terms of the prostitution deaths, what can be suggested as a policy thrust or amendment in the legislation which can address this, assuming that there are policy gaps? Because I assume that at this point it's all executive action, police action. Is there anything in the existing structure that can be corrected either through a policy from the part of the executive or a law on the part of Congress? Can anyone address that, answer that? Is there any change that you see must be done in our policy other than banning the POGOs here? In terms of strengthening our resolve to prevent such social malady from spreading in our society. Meron pa kayo maisip na kailangan nating ilagay sa batas o sabihin sa executive branch na dapat gawin para mabawasan man kung hindi tigil itong prostitution death, proliferation of prostitution deaths?
For example, Sen. Frank, the committee sees ngayon pa lamang at least 3 policy gaps. Yung recruitment and entry ng mga trafficked and prostituted women, yung operations, including the lack of monitoring of the visa status, kaya hinihintay natin yung data from the Bureau of Immigration. And last but not the least, yung raid and rescue. So ngayon, no clear policy what to do, how to help, paano mag-intervene sa mga rescued women. I think I saw, yes, Ms. Jean Enriquez from Catwalk, would you like to address this question?
Good morning, Your Honors. Thank you also for convening this hearing because it's very important to us. As you mentioned earlier, it's a historical struggle for us to be addressing the industry of prostitution in the Philippines. It has been existent for a long time. While there are more buyers now from Chinese nationals, we know historically that there have been Korean, Australian, and even Filipino buyers for a long time. So in terms of policy gaps, we believe it's very important that we also look into the entry of foreign buyers. While single women might be indicators for some sectors in terms of possible victims of trafficking, it's important to direct our efforts towards the demand side of trafficking because we have been a signatory to the 1949 Convention on the Suppression of Trafficking Persons, the year 2000 Optional Protocol, and our very own law. All of these emphasize that our efforts should be directed towards penalizing the perpetrators and therefore both the buyers and the businesses who profit from this. So it's important to look into the entry of the buyers, the single men who are coming in also without any business but possibly coming in as sex tourists. Doesn't help when your officials also invite tourists and using 42 virgins as come on to come to the Philippines. So we were concerned when there are such misogynistic remarks also coming from our officials. And also we believe that it's important, as we were discussing the cases earlier and the statistics, to look into the very perpetrators of these businesses here, the online promoters and recruiters, not only in terms of immigration because this is online. So I believe this can be a subject of investigation of the NCI as well because we have a cybercrime unit. And we can look into this promotion and advertisements of the travel agencies such as the Fruit Travel, I believe that was mentioned earlier. And how really are the buyers, not only the Chinese but other nationals, even local buyers, are in collusion with those who are promoting this. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't see a lot, or probably there's one conviction or prosecution of a buyer under the anti-trafficking law, but the focus has always been towards the businesses, the recruiters, etc., and mostly for cross-border trafficking. We believe that this is a huge issue now that can be used as a platform to advocate for a focus on the buyers, because if there's no demand side, then there will be no trafficking that will be catering to the perceived need but are actually artificial demand for prostituted women and girls, and basically created now by online advertisements, etc. So that's one policy gap, basically addressing also the coming in of sex tourists, but also in terms of implementation of a very comprehensive law that we already have. It's really important to look into the buyers, and in terms of finally helping those who were trafficked, both children and adults, it's also important, we feel, for our social welfare department to have counselors who are speaking also Chinese or the language of foreign nationals, because in the experience of our counterparts in the US, for example, the Sanctuary for Families, the Chinese-speaking counselors were able to bring out during their counseling data about their buyers and also the traffickers, because often victim survivors won't speak ill of their traffickers for fear of retribution, etc. But they would be speaking about their buyers, and that was the experience of our colleagues, the coalition in the United States. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Enriquez. You talk about the demand side of the issue of the problem. Are there policy gaps on the supply side in terms of executive action, implementation, or in terms of the law? On the supply side, has there been cases of the supply side, or has there been effort to constrict the supply side of the problem? Because it's a little, whether or not tourists would come in specifically for this purpose is something that we have to look at, but it's a little, as I sit here, I find difficulty trying to figure out what are the policy gaps that we can address, but there should be, given our experience here. But I'm interested also, number one, whether there are enough policies to constrict the supply side.
When you say constricting the supply side, it means addressing the traffickers as well, and therefore the businesses who are recruiting the women and the children to be offered to the demand. To constrict them, it will be important to investigate also the syndicates, the businesses who are earning from this. But the flaw in just focusing on the women themselves, like what happened in terms of our policy towards Japan, suppressing the supply and therefore having more requirements, for example, entertainers to going towards Japan. I'm digressing a bit, but just to illustrate the point that if you don't address the demand, there will be continuous recruitment of women and children even to be supplied to the demand side. So what happened in terms of trafficking to Japan, there were more fiancé and spouse visas instead of entertainers visas because the demand side in Japan and the recruiters here in the Philippines were not really addressed as such. So it's important to really target the businesses who are earning from this. And in terms of the vulnerabilities of the victims, it's important that we also address the strategic problem of alternative jobs for the women.
From the law enforcement side or from any other side, do we have a confidential listing of who the suppliers are or which businesses are engaged in this kind of an activity, but using a front in order to hide their operations? Do we have intelligence reports on this? Just
For example, Sen. Frank, kanina in response to one of your questions, Major Ina said meron po kayong mga datos. Yung datos po will be yan. Kasama po yung tinatanong ngayon ni Sen. Frank tungkol dun sa mga traffickers mismo at yung mga negosyo dito.
In the PNP side, in investigation of human trafficking, we have to determine first the elements, the acts, the means, and purpose. So nandun na yung acts because there is already a recruitment. There is already a means because they have to invite them for an employment here in any kind of this sex business. And there is already a purpose if there is already a sexual trafficking or sexual exploitation. So in my experience in Makati, for my two exclusive hotel accomplished about human trafficking, unlike before, in traditional way, dati meron tayong tinatawag na prostitution din, confined in a room or in any establishment of any house. Dati yun. But now, nag-evolve din sila. Nagre-rent sila sa isang hotel. They are staying there for a month or for a week or even daily for them to evade the detection. So yun po yung mga karamihan modus nila. Then, gusto ko sanang sabihin dito na there must be a a regulation about these hotel industries. There must be a desk or a tourist desk. On the PNP side, we have this PNP tourist desk. Binomonitor lang namin yung mga presence ng mga group of Chinese, a group of other foreign nationals in a one hotel, staying there for a week, staying for a month, because there is already a clear showing na merong mga presence ng human trafficking doon sa hotel na yun. What I mentioned is the Max Hotel. They stay there they rent the hotel for 1 year. Correct me if I'm wrong. Then, in another hotel in the NBI also conducted a raid in the 3 hotels in Makati with our coordination. The Eurotel, the Makati Palace, I think, and the Berjaya. So they are staying there and they are renting there for a year, for a month, or for a week. So that's my observation, ma'am. Because at the PNP side, we look into their modus para ma-prevent itong human trafficking.
Ines, please provide the committee those data in writing copies. Let's continue with all our law enforcement agencies, including NBI, at yung atin din po mga local government units. I'm glad also nandito po yung mga kinatawan ni Mayor of Pasay. Kasi by the way, dito mismo sa Senate backyard namin, no, napapansin ko po, there are a number of establishments catering exclusively or apparently exclusively to Chinese nationals in the area. Namomonitor po ba ito ng ating mga law enforcement agencies in partnership sa city government? Would the Pasay resource person like to address this, or would it be Major Ines again? Thank you, Senfran. Thank you, Senfran. Major Ines, gusto niyo po bang namomonitor po ba ng counterparts ng PNP sa Pasay City yung ganitong mga perhaps I should ask Police General Abella, namomonitor po ba ng PNP itong mga actual or seemingly Chinese-only establishments dito mismo sa malapit sa Senate sa Pasay City to look out for possible danger that they are also involved in trafficking and prostitution?
Good morning po, ma'am. Sir Chairman.
Morning.
Actually, ma'am, yung hindi lang po sa Pasay City, actually we operate based on yung mga actual complaint na pumunta sa aming offices and inakipag-sabay tulungan po ng mga NGOs. Just recently, may payment yung aming hotel naman na nag-report po sa amin in Quezon, Manila, in hotel. Nireport po nila na merong sa opisina na merong suspected na kwarto doon na allegedly for trafficking na-operate po namin. Actually, isa lang mo, yun po yung pinaka-latest pa. So,
ito po yung latest, General. Pero kabuuan, ilan na pong rates ang nakonduct ng PNP, whether solely or in partnership sa NBI at sa LGUs?
For 2019, ma'am, we have conducted 6 operations and we have a total of 144 victims of prostitutions and 55 perpetrators.
Please proceed, General.
So, ganun po ma'am yung nangyayari. At least mayroon po yung aming unit sa Kampani, yung Women's and Children's Protection Center. Directly maintained kami sa mga foreign nationals na and agencies just like the Homeland Security, the Australian Federal Police, and usually nagkakaroon kami ng mga meeting through IJM, meron ganyan. So sila po ay nag-report po sa amin ng mga suspected na nationals ng kanilang respective countries, and then through them nakakatulong din po atin po na nakakapag-rescue po tayo ng mga victims dito sa ating bansa.
Dito po sa anim na raids, 2019 until today, General, meron po kayong na-rescue na 144 women and I suppose children as well. Ano na po yung kalakaran? Pagkatapos ng raid, pagkatapos ma-rescue sila, ano na pong nangyayari sa kanila? Paano na sila inaalagaan after the rescue?
We usually conduct your aid with the DSWD, ma'am. Tapos yun, pinaprocess po, and then yung iba naman pumapagsak sa yung mga NGOs, saka yung mga bahay na nagkukukup sa kanila.
And if you have any data about this, General, para lang maidugtong namin yung data ng bawat city police, then yung PNP, since yung office po ninyo is in charge of women and children protection, and then we will look at the data from the other agencies, including the Bureau of Immigration, para lang madrawing po ng komite yung kabuang sitwasyon nila as far as we can determine from the time na pumasok dito sa ating bansa until the time, if ever, na ma-rescue and moving forward.
Yes, ma'am, we will collect the data, ma'am.
And then, General, yung 55 na na-apprehend din yung suspected perpetrators, kanina po may nabanggit na isang kaso pa lamang na pinoprosecute sa ngayon. What happened to the other 54?
In question na po, ma'am, yung 54. Sa pinaprocess po yung pinakahuli, ma'am.
Ito pong 55 lahat ay ano-anong pong mga nationality nila?
May Chinese po, ma'am.
Ilan po sa 55 ang Chino?
19 po.
19. And then the rest po ay mga Pilipino?
Saudi po, Saudi 1.
I would suppose po, General Abella, given yung sinabi ni Major Ines kanina, earlier sinabi din yung personal impression ni Ms. Cheryl na dahil yung profile ng buyers ng mga Chinese prostituted women ay mga POGO workers, sila yung mga nagiging kliyente o mga buyers. I would presume na mas marami pong Chinese na nationals na either yung mga pimps mismo, yung mga negosyante, at yung mga buyers o customers ay nakakatakas pa sa mga raid.
Yes, ma'am. Mas marami po yung Chinese.
Major Ines, meron po ba kayong gustong idagdag in terms of yung experience nyo on the ground after a raid and a rescue, kung ano nang napapala yung mga rescued Chinese or other nationals na prostituted women?
I think, ma'am, the local DSWD will tell what happened to them, because after our raid, after our rescue operations, immediately nire-refer namin sa local social worker ng isang bayan.
Thank you, Major. Doon ma'am, baka doon sa usapin ng pag-turnover, either pagsama ng City DSWD sa PNP and or sa NBI sa mga raid, after ma-rescue yung mga prostituted women and girl children, ano na po yung naging karanasan ng Pasay City Government?
Good morning po. In the experience of Pasay City, sa ngayon po, wala pong victims of trafficking na na-handle si Pasay City. Lahat po ng mga nare-rescue ay we refer them to the national DSWD for temporary shelter. So I would just like to read the position of our office with regards to this. The Pasay City government recognizes the role of women and girl children in nation building. Since the passage of RA 9208, otherwise known as the Anti-Trafficking in Persons Act of 2003, and RA 10364, the city government of Pasay, through the Pasay Social Welfare and Development Department, in partnership with DSWD, PNP, NBI, and DOJ, had been undertaking rescue operations to women victims of trafficking. From 2016 to 2019,
There were 30 cybersexual exploitation cases, all involving women ages 13 to 20 years old, that were rescued in collaboration with PNP, DSWD, NBI, and DOJ. All were rescued from condominiums and houses. From the highly visible dens, such as clubs and entertainment centers, cases of sexual trafficking now go highly subtle, which makes us more difficult to notice. From the 30 cases of sexual trafficking, almost all victims are not Pasay City residents. Majority came from nearby cities and provinces. Some were victims of deceitful offers. They were offered with good jobs only to end up being exploited. The problem now is becoming more complex, sabi nga po kanina. Internet use and social media becomes more accessible, making it the easiest way to carry out sexual trafficking acts. There should have mechanisms to safeguard the use of this technology. In spite of the existing laws protecting women and girl children, several violations of their rights continuously happen, including the cybersexual exploitation. During interview to the victims of the following circumstances prompt them to engage in such activities. Yung mga reasons po ng ating mga victims. Number one po, financial problem. Number two, to satisfy personal needs. Ang dami na pong mga needs ng mga kababaihan ngayon na especially yung mga gadgets and mga mamahaling gamit. Kaya nag-resort sila sa trafficking. Easy money daw po ang pagpasok sa trafficking. Then, influence from friends, unemployment, and majority of them po are out of school youth. Yun po yung profile na nakuha namin doon sa mga na-rescue cases. Preventive measures such as more jobs with good salary, long-term employment, moral recovery interventions, and more strict enforcement of the existing laws. It is high time for us, the government, to formulate doable mechanisms to address the emerging concerns on the exploitation of women. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mary. Bago tayo magpatuloy, kailangan nang maunang umalis yung mga resource persons natin mula sa PNP, at least ng WCPC. Okay, just si General Abella for a dawning ceremony. Mabuhay po para dawn, but the committee will very probably be requesting you to either return to the next hearing or to receive the recommendations of the committee kung paano talaga natin lalabanan itong problema ng trafficking at prostitution dito sa ating bansa. Thank you very much, General Abella. You may go ahead.
Thank you very much, Ito.
Ma'am, can I share something?
Yes, please, Deputy Director.
In the law enforcement, our main problem here is about the rescued victims. If this committee can improve on how to handle rescued victims, that is very well taken, because we experienced that most of the cases that we file against suspects, it is being dismissed because the rescued victims them again. So victims can be taken care of so that they will be available when they are called for to testify in the prosecutor or the courts. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Deputy Director. Certainly yung policy and implementation gaps natin sa raid and rescue, very well taken, nakikita po yan ng komite, but we will still need to do a lot more work, even on the recruitment and entry side, and the operations in country. But at this point, I'd like to recognize again you, Sec M.
Thank you, Senator. Earlier, Senator Dillon asked about our recommendations. I wasn't able to answer because we skipped to another topic, but jumping off from what was said by the Deputy Director of the NBI, maybe on Section 8 of the current Republic Act 9208 on investigation and prosecution of trafficking in persons cases. We would, as we suggested already to the good senator, maybe we can make an exception to the anti-wiretapping law, because as we already manifested through our examples, most of the recruiting happens online, through social media, like Facebook, or through the chat apps, which we have no access to unless there is exception, with of course the safeguards such as having a written order from the court. So in our suggestion to the senator, this was one of them, to be able to improve investigation and prosecution. Another suggestion with respect to this is requiring the internet service providers to notify the PNP or the NBI regarding commission of sexual trafficking, or if there is some, for instance, they're able to monitor photos such as the ones displayed earlier of naked women, because they're able to monitor this. If there are photos, naked photos of women that comes across these internet service providers, that require them to notify the law enforcement officers within 7 days of obtaining this fact. If it contains any form of child pornography, most especially, which is already in the current Anti-Child Pornography Act. However, what's written there is there are still some controversies with respect to the implementation of the Anti-Child Pornography Act, with respect to the requirement for the internet service providers to give this piece of information to the PNP. Maybe this can be clarified also, because the internet service providers still require a court order, which they're not supposed to anymore. But since the law is quite ambiguous, it's not very clear whether this is required or not. I guess they're just being more cautious, since this involves a breach of privacy. I guess this could be one of the things that our dear legislators could look into. Also, with respect also to our tourism-oriented establishments like hotels, resorts, motels, and other related facilities, they should also be mandated to inform the law enforcement officers whenever they notice any incidents of human trafficking. So they should be, the signs of, or the badges of what human trafficking is, should be explained to them through probably some of the agencies like IACAT in coordination with the DOT, and they should be required to report this, because right now they do this voluntarily, but there's no law that requires them to do so. And then also with respect to reintegration and recovery and reintegration of the victims, under Section 24 of the current RA 9208, maybe what we can also do is to institutionalize our recovery and reintegration program of the DSWD, so that funds can be permanently allocated for these services that the DSWD provides. Because at the moment, one of the problems that they've been encountering, that the DSWD is encountering, is the lack of social workers to respond to the victims, especially for children, child minor victims, since there's specific training required to handle trauma-informed care for children, which we lack, the DSWD lacks. And maybe our legislators could look into this, not only in amending 9208, but also in preparing the budget.
Well taken, Yusek. Thank you very much. In fact, we are filing an expanded anti-trafficking bill with inputs from IACAT and of course from the advocates who've also been working on this issue for a long time. And by way of a recent development also on the executive side, just within the last half hour, naibalita that in fact the visa upon arrival has been suspended because of the coronavirus concern. So I think that's a good example na ang kaya nga dapat gawin ng executive if for public health reasons, then also possibly for other societal concerns, including yung tinatalakay natin ngayong trafficking and prostitution. I'd like to end, if possible, by 12 noon. So just last 3 questions sa ating mga law enforcement agencies, whether the NBI or the PNP. Just for the record again, have any cases been filed at all pursuant dito sa 6 na raids na isinagawa na sinabi ni General Aberia kanina? Would it be Police Major Cipriano or yes ma'am, please. So any cases filed following on those 6 raids?
Good morning, ma'am. So out of the 6 cases filed by the WCPC or the cases reported in the WCPC of these involving Chinese victims or Chinese suspects, 1 case has been filed in court and these suspects arraigned. Another case, 2 cases are for hearings for petition for bail. 1 was released for further investigation. 1 is undergoing trial. 1 was presently requested. And another one was also undergoing trial now.
And of the 144 women and girl children rescued, particular dun sa mga Chinese women na na-rescue, nasa na po sila ngayon?
So I'd like to state the status of the victims. In the case operated on December 5, all victims were released. On the case operated on September 4, the victims were deported. On the case operated on September 18, the victims were turned over to the Haven for Women at Alabang, Muntinlupa. On a case operated on October 7, the victims were released by court order and turned over to relatives. On the operation dated December 27, the victims were released after assessment of DSWD. And recently on the case operated on January 19, 2020, the victims are under the custody of the DSWD.
Thank you very much, Major Cipriano. Medyo nakapagtataka lang yun. It's the second time actually I've heard it this morning, yung turned over to relatives. So na-traffic sila dito from China, pero nung nirelease sila, turned over to relatives. So meron pala sila mga kamag-anak dito. In any case, it is of concern kasi yung isang balita po namin ay yung mga released, kalaunan bumabalik din lamang sa prostitution. So hindi natin alam kung at least yung mga relatives nila ay totoong relatives or kasama din po ba ng industriya na iyan. In any case po, lastly, no, I just want to end again with the voice of freedom. Just for the record again, alam niyo po ba kung nasaan na ngayon yung Chinese women na dinala sa inyo last year? They're probably among the numbers stated by Major Cipriano, but particularly those na sa kamay ninyo, alam niyo ba kung kumusta, nasaan na ba sila ngayon?
Ayun po ma'am, so probably yun isa po talaga sa gap yung monitoring yung mga rescued women after shelter. So since this is our first time, we found it talaga very challenging considering that there is a certification issued from the Bureau of Immigration that there's no immigration violation committed by the rescued women. So with the SWD Makati and PNP Makati, we decided to discharged to their relatives with the lawyers, of course, of the group. So as of now, we don't have really information as to the whereabouts of the women, of the Chinese women nationals.
Thank you, Ms. Cheryl. Sa dami ng sinabi din about the gap and the need for reintegration, recovery and reintegration, mukhang kailangan pa talaga tignan what happens actually to these women. Nakakalayo ba talaga sila dyan sa trafficking at prostitution na iyan? Or nire-recycle lang sila, or pilit nilang nire-recycle ang sarili nila in and out of these doors. So just to end the first hearing this morning, bago a few closing remarks, so narinig na po natin ang voice of the free, narinig po natin ang catwalk. I just like to ask if mula sa International Justice Mission at ganoon din sa Destiny, kung meron po kayong mga rekomendasyon, initial recommendations, because we will have a second hearing, initial recommendations to ensure this protection and rehabilitation of the victim survivors. So, Mr. Deacon, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for this opportunity. Actually, hearing from the IACAT, the policy changes, recommendation, we actually subscribe to those amendments, proposed amendments in the law, and actually these are the gaps that we are seeing. But I just want to state that since 2010, and we've been working with the government since 2001 to address sex trafficking in the Philippines, we have seen this momentum, this increasing momentum of the government in combating sex trafficking in the Philippines. As a matter of fact, we've seen the drastic reduction in the prevalence of minors in Metro Manila by 75%, 86% in Angeles City, and 79% in Cebu. We measured it in 2016. And so this is a result of just the laws that are already in place that are being enforced. And we're seeing that if laws are effectively enforced, the abuse of the vulnerable dramatically decreases. And so I think the answer really, we have, Senator Diron asked earlier if we have enough laws. I think we have strong laws, the Anti-Trafficking Law, the Anti-Child Pornography Act, and other executive policies in place that would combat trafficking. And we are seeing the wonderful results of that. Actually, I think the issue now is the changing trend in sex trafficking, because as what we've heard from the witness earlier, as we've seen, the trafficking is now assuming a new form, and new crime types are emerging, like the use of the online platform, the use of technology in sex transactions. And of course, the increasing prevalence, which is actually disheartening, of the Philippines now being described as the epicenter of online sexual exploitation of children. Cheryl mentioned earlier a 1-year-old baby being trafficked online. And so this is now the trend that the Philippine government should address. First, by effective and consistent law enforcement, so being able to address the crime as it changes, as new crime types emerge. And I think those can also be addressed by our laws with improvements proposed by the IACAT, but also expanding and increasing the capacity of our law enforcement to address this new trend, this new crime type. And one big gap we're seeing is even the capacity of the law enforcement to conduct online investigations, to detect where the victims are, where this is happening, who are the suppliers, or who are the customers. So resources being put in place, resources being invested by the government, increasing the budget, the personnel of our law enforcement who would be dedicated to investigate this crime. And we've done that. The government has done that. You know, we already have a dedicated anti-trafficking unit. We have already prosecutorial task forces. We have already some innovations in the aftercare system, in the local government. But yeah, more needs to be done. And I think that can be done as we have succeeded in the past with one government approach So through interagency coordination, enhancing the coordination, increasing the resources, then I think we will be able to address sex trafficking as it develops, as it evolves, and even the crime types that are being identified, like online sexual exploitation of children. Because this is, I think, probably more than the POGOs, the issue of prostitution focused online sexual exploitation of children is the most concerning, I think the darkest form of child sexual exploitation that we have encountered in the field. So I think we need to continue focusing on that, and yeah, our organization will continue to support all the efforts of our government in finding a solution in addressing this problem. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bicol. And last but not the least, Destiny, would you like to? Yes, sir. Mr. Lysico, please.
I'd just like to echo what Attorney Bicol said. We've seen a prevalence of human trafficking, but from our experience, we mainly deal with Filipino minors and Filipino women. But over the years, what we've seen a change in trends, a change in operation styles, and a change in modes from anywhere from street prostitution to bars and underground brothels. Right now, we're seeing another trend, which is Chinese nationals who are mainly being exploited in hotels and whatnot. We have received information from both PNP and NBI to help and assist in these cases. And I guess that's where our part in this really is. We're here to assist either financially or through other resources which we offer to the PNP and national police, PNP and NBI. Whatever the policies that are amended, we 100% support that, and we'll work within those policies.
Thank you, Mr. Lysico. We began these hearings with a very straightforward resolution. Pero habang pinatapos natin itong unang hearing, parang may mas marami pang mga tanong na lumilitaw. And therefore, I think that the committee will look at Chinese prostitution in the Philippines as a business and as an industry. And for that purpose, I will be calling a second hearing. Pero panimula, maraming salamat sa lahat ng mga resource persons. We will also, as I mentioned earlier, invite to the next hearing also the Chinese Embassy. And I think nakikinig pa kayo kanina at attorney, maraming salamat higit sa lahat sa iyo kanina. Thank you, friends, and see you at the next hearing. Salamat.